Security is a somewhat abstract concept. What is secure enough? For an old rusty bike, maybe a cheap lock is plenty. For a vault of gold, you would need something a lot stronger. The amount of security you need depends on the level of attack someone is willing to do. In this video, I will argue that proof of work cannot provide enough security for what Bitcoin wants to do. Different people have different ideas over what the goal of Bitcoin is. Digital gold is a term commonly used by the Bitcoin community, so in this video, I will assume that the goal of Bitcoin is to be a store of value equivalent to gold. One of the main uses of gold is to be stored by sovereign entities in their reserves, so I will be judging the security of proof of work over whether it is secure enough to fulfill that objective. So first off, let's assume tomorrow that the US decided it wanted to store Bitcoin in its reserves. What level of security would it need? Well, it needs enough to defend against anyone who wants to attack it, which in this case I'd say would be other sovereigns. So let's assume Russia may think it would be a good idea to attack Bitcoin to cause some disruption to the US. Let's first go through a basic 51% attack to see what Bitcoin's current security level is. If Russia just threw money at the problem without trying anything more complex, how much would it cost to attack Bitcoin using today's numbers? The answer is around $10 billion over a year. The calculations are on screen now. Russia's tax revenue is around $500 billion per year, so $10 billion over a year is just 2% of its revenue. It would cost a lot, but Russia could afford this attack if it wanted to. However, Bitcoin is not likely to remain at today's price of $30,000 forever, and as the price increases, the cost to perform this attack also increases. Maybe the price of Bitcoin goes up 100x because the US bought so much, and makes the attack $1 trillion per year. Then no one could really afford the attack. The halvings would eventually bring the price of the attack back down, but if it was an emergency, Bitcoin could change to having a constant level of inflation to maintain a certain level of security. In theory, as long as you can provide enough of a reward, you can make proof of work as secure as you need, right? Well, I didn't say proof of work cannot provide enough security for no reason. The problem with the crude attack described earlier is that it assumes block rewards only go to the hash power defending the network. In reality, the attacker has just as much access to block rewards as the defenders. Block rewards that the attacker receives are now block rewards that the defenders don't, and so decreases the amount of hash power in the network, as defenders will shut down their mining equipment if they are no longer making a profit. If the US were to store large amounts of Bitcoin in its reserves, an easy attack Russia could do would be to simply provide a subsidy for miners to mine in Russia. Why would subsidizing miners be an attack, you may ask? Well, now a significant number of miners will move to Russia, where they will be making more of a profit than the miners outside of Russia. Eventually, Russian miners will increase the hash rate to the point where the only profitable miners will be the Russian miners, as they get both the normal block reward and the subsidy from Russia. The other, independent miners, would only be receiving the block reward, so wouldn't be able to compete and would shut down. Now, you have a scenario where the majority of hash power is located in Russia and is reliant on the subsidy from Russia to be profitable. Due to this reliance on the subsidy, the hash power is now under the control of Russia and will do what Russia wants, because without the subsidy, it would become unprofitable and would shut down. Russia just needs to force this hash power to no longer reference non-Russian blocks, and it will have complete control of the network and can do what it likes. This would be the death of Bitcoin. Now, you could argue that the US wouldn't just let this happen and would build up its own hash power to defend Bitcoin, and this is probably what would happen. If the US saw this attack, it would also subsidize its own miners, and as the US has a much bigger economy than Russia, it would likely be successful at acquiring most of the hash power. However, now you're left with the only hash power in the network being miners subsidized by the US. Independent miners who only relied on block rewards would have long since become unprofitable and shut down. Bitcoin, being completely controlled by the US, would not be Bitcoin, so this scenario would also be the death of Bitcoin. Are there any other solutions? Is there a way to even the playing field by punishing the US and Russian miners whilst rewarding the independent miners? The answer is no. All miners are doing is producing a hash. There's nothing identifiable about a hash. There's no way to know which hashes were produced by independent miners compared to subsidized miners, so no way for the protocol to attempt to subsidize the independent miners itself. With proof of work, you either punish or reward everyone or no one. Ultimately, because proof of work relies so much on the world being rational, it does not cope well when there are irrational actors who don't mind spending money without a return. An attacker just needs to subsidize its own miners enough so that they can mine more profitably than the non-subsidized miners, and they can take over the network. Once one entity starts subsidizing miners, then the only miners that can survive are other subsidized miners. If all miners are then at the mercy of the entity subsidizing them, Bitcoin will no longer be free or secure. This weakness is why proof of work cannot provide enough security for Bitcoin to replace gold. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe if you want to catch my future content.